What would your life look like if the shadow no longer controlled you? Not temporarily pushed aside, not momentarily quieted, not reluctantly acknowledged, but truly integrated, understood, and transformed. Imagine waking up each morning without that dark voice of doubt, without that inner critic that whispers you're inadequate, unworthy, incomplete. What mountains would you climb then? What depths would you explore? What parts of yourself would you finally embrace with unwavering compassion? Because the truth is, the shadow isn't your enemy. Denial is. The shadow is natural, it's primal, it's the collection of all you've hidden away. But it only dominates when you refuse to face it. And every time you look away, every time you project outward instead of looking inward, you surrender your power for illusion. You trade growth for comfortable blindness. You fragment instead of integrate. Not because you're weak, but because the shadow has convinced you that fragmentation is safety. But not today. Today we illuminate the shadow for what it truly is, not a monster to be feared, but a messenger carrying the parts of yourself waiting to be reclaimed. In the next several minutes, you're going to discover how to stop running from your shadow and start embracing it. How to stand in wholeness, even when confronting your darkest aspects. How to act with integrity before certainty arrives. And how to build a consciousness so integrated and complete that fear finds no dark corners left to hide. So take a deep breath, turn inward, and prepare for transformation. Because this is the day you master your shadow. As we dive deeper, make sure you subscribe to Motivation Dose right now. We release powerful content just like this every single day, designed to transform not just your thinking, but your entire life. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss the daily dose of wisdom that could change everything. Now let's continue. Let's get something clear. Your shadow is not your enemy. The shadow, as Carl Jung discovered, is simply the unconscious repository of all you've denied in yourself. The traits, desires, and impulses that didn't fit your self-image or social expectations. It's ancient, it's universal, it's woven into the very fabric of your psyche to maintain balance. And in many ways, it's preserved your sense of self. But what the shadow was never meant to do is operate unchecked. It was never meant to secretly pull your strings, drive your reactions, or project itself onto others. Yet that's exactly what happens when we avoid confronting it. We let the unseen direct our lives, and then wonder why we keep stumbling in the dark. You feel the shadow's pull when something triggers disproportionate emotion, when you strongly judge others for traits you deny in yourself, when you react instead of respond. That's not weakness. That's your psyche revealing where integration needs to happen. But here's the truth most never hear. The shadow itself isn't what weakens you. Unconsciousness is. The real enemy isn't the darkness within, but the refusal to shine a light upon it. It's the projection you cast outward, rather than the reflection you're willing to face. It's the wholeness you postpone for some later date when you feel ready to face yourself. Most people are waiting for comfort before they confront their shadow, waiting to feel safe before they venture into psychological depths. But that moment never comes, because wholeness isn't achieved through comfort, it's achieved through courage. And if you're waiting to feel completely prepared before facing your shadow, you'll be waiting your entire life. Those who achieve true individuation, who transform their lives, who reach authentic self-realization, they feel fear too, but they look inward anyway. That's the crucial shift. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to stop allowing fear to justify unconsciousness. You need to stop giving your shadow permission to operate unseen. The shadow can exist, certainly. That's human nature. But it doesn't get to rule from darkness anymore. And here's where transformation begins. The more you illuminate your shadow, the less power it holds over you. Every time you acknowledge what you've denied, you integrate what was fractured. You teach your unconscious that shadow material doesn't mean danger. It means opportunity. It means wholeness. It means you're getting closer to true selfhood. You become something the shadow can't control because you've trained your consciousness to expand before fear can contract it. So the next time you feel that strong emotional charge, that unexplainable trigger, remember, you don't need less shadow, you need more awareness. Don't suppress, don't dismiss, don't project. Just observe. because shadow work hates illumination, and the moment you bring consciousness to it, integration begins. The shadow speaks in powerful stories. It crafts narratives so personally compelling, so emotionally charged that they feel like absolute reality. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your shadow is the greatest mythmaker of your unconscious. It whispers that you're fundamentally flawed, that your darkness makes you unworthy, that if people saw the entirety of who you are, they would reject you. And because these shadow stories wear the voice of your deepest self, you believe them. You accept them as identity rather than recognizing them as unconscious material, asking for integration. Shadow thrives in fragmentation. It takes your disowned qualities and builds an entire underworld around them. You don't just worry about your anger, you see yourself as someone fundamentally dangerous. You don't just acknowledge your ambition, you imagine yourself as ruthlessly selfish. You don't just recognize your vulnerability, you construct an identity of fundamental weakness. That's how the shadow operates, not with truth, but with magnification. The more you deny these aspects of yourself, the more your psyche must compensate by making them appear in distorted, often frightening forms. And when your unconscious believes these distortions are your reality, it creates internal conflict so intense that even the smallest step toward wholeness feels impossibly threatening. But here's the breakthrough Jung discovered. If shadow is created through denial, it's healed through acceptance. If shadow grows through fragmentation, it diminishes through integration. The mind that can divide can also unite. The consciousness that can repress can also embrace. This is the battlefield, not out there in the world of projections, but in here, in the realm of consciousness. And the moment you stop accepting the shadow's distorted narrative and start embracing the fullness of who you are, the light and the dark, the conscious and unconscious, you reclaim wholeness. You don't have to feel comfortable to face your shadow. You don't have to feel certain to begin integration. You just have to stop giving unconsciousness the final word. Because the voice from the depths is powerful, but it doesn't dictate your destiny. And the biggest illusion it sells is that your shadow is your limit. It's not. It's your gateway to wholeness, the flag announcing you're standing at the edge of your next evolution. What happens next, that's entirely up to you. If you're feeling the power of these insights already, don't keep them to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs this message today. And remember to subscribe to Motivation Dose. We deliver content that challenges, inspires, and transforms every single day. Our community is growing stronger through wisdom like this. Now, let's continue our journey into mastering the shadow. Shadow grows in denial, in projection, in avoidance. The more you refuse to see it in yourself, the larger it looms. The more you try to outthink it, the more it operates beneath thought. Because shadow doesn't diminish with distance, it diminishes with integration. This is where most people fundamentally misunderstand the path. They wait for shadow material to feel comfortable before they're willing to face it. They wait for the fear to subside before they begin the work of wholeness. But comfort never precedes growth, it follows it. Integration doesn't arrive before acceptance, it emerges because of it. Imagine standing at the edge of your unconscious, vast, mysterious, containing all you've disowned. You can circle it endlessly, analyze it intellectually, conceptualize it from a distance, and still feel the same fear looking into its depths. Or you can descend, feel the initial shock of recognition, allow your system to adjust, and discover that what you feared as monstrous was simply the unfamiliar parts of yourself waiting to be reclaimed. That's integration. Not avoiding discomfort, but being willing to move through it. Not being fearless, but being willing to feel fear and still pursue wholeness. It's about looking your projections, your triggers, your judgments straight in the eye and saying, what part of myself am I meeting here? Speak even when recognizing your shadow feels exposing. Show up even when integration seems overwhelming. Face your projections even when they feel absolutely true about others, rather than revealing about yourself. That's the discipline, that's the practice, because repetition rewires consciousness. The first shadow encounter is terrifying, the second one is illuminating, the 10th one is transformative, and the 100th time, that's liberation. The individuals you admire, the integrated beings, the self-realized souls, they didn't start whole, they started fractured. The only difference is they refused to remain that way. They built tolerance for shadow work. They didn't run from their projections. They followed them home, again and again, until unconscious material couldn't control them anymore. The truth is, the shadow never fully dissolves. That's not the goal. The goal is consciousness. You stop being controlled by what you're willing to see. You stop projecting what you're able to own. You walk straight through discomfort, through recognition, through the humbling process of reclaiming what you've denied. Not because integration is easy, but because the other side of shadow work holds the life you haven't fully lived yet. And that's a price worth paying. If you want to master your shadow, you must go to its source, your unconscious. Because unconscious material doesn't originate in the world, it emerges from within. It arises in the patterns, the triggers, the judgments you form without awareness, shaping your reality while remaining hidden from your conscious mind. Here's the essential truth. If you don't illuminate your unconscious, it will direct you. Left unexamined, the psyche becomes a territory where shadow always wins. But you're not here to be ruled by unconscious forces. You're here to achieve integration, to take back awareness, and write a new chapter of wholeness. It begins with this profound realization. You are not your shadow, but neither are you separate from it. You are the consciousness that can hold both light and dark, both known and unknown aspects of yourself. So when the shadow reveals itself through your triggers or projections, you don't just react, you investigate. You respond not with judgment but curiosity. What forgotten part of myself am I meeting here? You disrupt the pattern, you interrupt the projection. Because every unconscious reaction is a seed, and what you bring to consciousness grows. If you leave shadow material unexplored, you'll harvest fragmentation. But if you illuminate the unconscious, if you flood your awareness with intentional integration, then wholeness becomes your natural state. This isn't about toxic positivity, it's about complete psychological honesty. The same way athletes train their bodies, artists hone their craft, and scholars develop their minds, you must train your consciousness with practices that expand awareness. Regular shadow work that asks what you're projecting, emotional honesty that acknowledges what you're feeling, dream analysis that reveals what your unconscious is processing. These aren't just techniques, they're disciplines that make the unconscious conscious. Tell yourself, I face my shadow without flinching. I recognize my projections before acting on them. I don't fragment, I integrate. These aren't just affirmations, they're commitments, and your unconscious is always responding. Don't just think these principles, embody them. Let your actions reflect your dedication to wholeness. When you acknowledge your shadow instead of projecting it, when you feel uncomfortable emotions instead of suppressing them, when you recognize your patterns instead of blindly repeating them, your psyche registers, we integrate now. That's how consciousness expands. That's how shadow loses its grip. You're not weak for having unconscious material, that's universal, but you remain fragmented if you refuse to make it conscious. Illuminate your inner world, and the outer world transforms to meet it. Guard your awareness like the precious resource it is. Interrupt unconsciousness, install consciousness, and remember that you always have a choice. Shadow may emerge, but it doesn't get to operate unseen unless you turn away from what it reveals. What if shadow wasn't something to fear, but something to integrate? What if the very aspects of yourself you're avoiding are precisely what you need to embrace for wholeness? Most people misinterpret their shadow. They think its appearance means danger, distance, denial. But in Jung's profound understanding, shadow is actually a compass. It points toward the disowned parts of yourself waiting to be reclaimed. And that's exactly where integration begins. That discomfort you feel when confronting certain traits in yourself or others, that immediate judgment, that disproportionate reaction, that's not weakness. That's your psyche identifying where consciousness needs to expand. That's your wholeness, recognizing what's still fragmented within you. Shadow work, facing your projections, acknowledging your unconscious patterns, integrating your disowned aspects. These aren't dangers, they're doorways. And the key to walking through them isn't perfection or certainty. It's awareness. One conscious step toward what you've been avoiding, straight into what your ego resists. Integration is not the absence of shadow. it is the courage to illuminate it. So when shadow material emerges, don't contract, expand. Don't project, reflect. Don't deny, embrace. Let it reveal what needs consciousness. Let it show you where you're still operating from unconsciousness. Let it become the very pathway to your wholeness. And hear this truth most will never understand. The shadow never disappears completely. Not for the integrated, not for the self-realized, not for the psychologically mature. The unconscious continues its work, but they've made peace with this process. They've learned to recognize projections quickly, to integrate shadow material skillfully, to continue expanding consciousness even while acknowledging its limitlessness. That's what makes them whole. Not that they have no shadow, but that they refuse to let it operate unseen. So the next time unconscious material reveals itself, say, I see you. I recognize what you're showing me about myself. This isn't something to project, it's something to integrate. And then take that step inward, feel the emotion, own the projection, expand your consciousness beyond its previous boundaries. The moment you turn toward shadow instead of away from it, integration has already begun. What remains is freedom. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. You will not achieve wholeness by waiting to feel ready for integration. You don't master shadow with intentions. You master shadow with practice. Motivation fluctuates. It's a momentary spark, bright and compelling, but quickly extinguished. Discipline, however, is the sustained flame, the unwavering commitment behind every integrated life. Because when you train yourself to face shadow, not when it feels comfortable, but when it needs consciousness, you become psychologically formidable. You become unshakable. Integration isn't a lightning strike of insight. It's a daily decision to bring awareness to what's unconscious, to acknowledge projections, to own disowned aspects of yourself again and again, especially when ego resistance is strongest. This is what the individuated understand. They don't wait for shadow work to feel inviting. They face unconscious material when it emerges and bring light to darkness. There's no debate. No, should I acknowledge this projection or deny it? It's already decided. Consciousness always expands, integration always proceeds, awareness always deepens. The shadow appears, you recognize its message. The projection forms, you follow it back to its source within you. The trigger activates, you investigate what it reveals about yourself. That's discipline. That's how the integrated are formed. You see, the more you practice shadow work, the more you rewire consciousness. You condition your psyche to understand that unconscious material isn't something to fear. It's information guiding you toward wholeness. And information doesn't control you. It illuminates your path. So ask yourself, are you living from unconsciousness or consciousness? If shadow still operates unseen, if projections still feel like absolute truth about others rather than revelations about yourself, then it's time for transformation. Build practices that expand awareness, surround yourself with reminders of your commitment to wholeness, honor your integration work as sacred. One conscious recognition of previously unconscious material every day, and you'll awaken one day wondering how you ever allowed fragmentation to feel like safety. Discipline makes you consistent, and consistency makes integration inevitable. Picture this, you're at the end of your journey looking back at the life you've lived. Around you are not just memories, but the essential question of consciousness. Did you integrate what was unconscious, or did you allow shadow to operate unseen? Did you project outward or reflect inward? Did you fragment, or did you make whole? You see, shadow doesn't just obscure moments, it obscures wholeness. It convinces you to remain divided, to keep parts of yourself in darkness, to project rather than integrate. But what if you could see the cost? What if you could recognize the wholeness that unconsciousness quietly prevents? Because that's the reality most never confront. They're choosing fragmentation. They think they're choosing comfort, safety, moral certainty, but what they're actually doing is burying their potential for individuation beneath denial. They're trading integration for the illusion of simplicity, wholeness for the comfort of not facing their entirety. Let me be absolutely clear. No one remembers those who remained unconscious. No one celebrates those who projected, rather than reflected. The world is transformed by those who are willing to face their shadow and integrate it anyway, by those who brought consciousness to unconsciousness, who recognized projections, who expanded awareness beyond comfortable boundaries despite the ego's resistance. Shadow work will always offer you fragmentation, but integration demands wholeness. It demands courage, consciousness, commitment. It demands that you decide what matters more, the comfort of denial or the power of integration, the ease of projection or the freedom of awareness. So ask yourself now, what will your consciousness reveal when your journey ends? Will it whisper of shadow left unconscious, projections left unrecognized, or will it testify to someone who chose integration over fragmentation, reflection over projection, wholeness over division? You don't need to know every aspect of your shadow. You just need to refuse to let unconsciousness have the final word. Because your integration is happening either way, and only one path leads to wholeness. If shadow thrives in unconsciousness, then your practices are the illumination. Because mastering your shadow isn't about one dramatic insight, it's about the consistent disciplines that make consciousness your natural state. The integrated aren't born whole, they're forged through awareness, and every day they perform small rituals that expand consciousness before shadow can operate unseen. Start here. Each morning, practice conscious projection recognition. Not complex, not overwhelming, just a simple moment of asking, what am I judging in others that I haven't acknowledged in myself? Why? Because consciousness must be trained. And when you teach your awareness to recognize projections, shadow begins to lose its hidden influence. Second, journal your triggers. Document what activates disproportionate emotion, what causes immediate judgment, what feels like absolute truth about others. Movement in consciousness prevents stagnation, and stagnation is where shadow thrives undisturbed. When you track your reactions, your awareness expands, clarity deepens, and unconscious material finds nowhere left to hide. Third, speak awareness into your shadow. Integration isn't idealistic, it's practical. The parts you acknowledge can no longer control you from darkness. Every day affirm, I integrate what I've denied. I bring consciousness to what's unconscious. I own what I've disowned. Speak it until you embody it, then act in ways that make it reality. Fourth, win the first battle with unconsciousness. Meditate, reflect, contemplate before reacting. Complete the shadow work you've been avoiding. Because when you start your day with expanded awareness, shadow loses a portion of its hidden power. And when you build consistent consciousness, you create momentum toward wholeness that makes integration not just possible, but inevitable. Finally, reflect each evening. Where did shadow appear today, and where did I bring consciousness to it? This is how you refine, this is how awareness sharpens. You become integrated not by avoiding shadow, but by illuminating it, again and again, until it transforms from enemy to messenger. The integrated life isn't accidental, it's intentional. It's created through commitment, through practice, through uncompromising psychological honesty. If you want to master your shadow, don't wait for unconscious material to feel comfortable. Face it, name it, own it, one projection recognition at a time. Today we don't just discuss shadow, we commit to its integration. Because the truth is, unconsciousness ends when you stop allowing it, when you stop turning away from it, when you realize it has only the power you've given it through denial. And from this moment forward, you reclaim that power through awareness. No more unconsciousness, no more projections, no more fragmentation to preserve illusory comfort. You were not born to remain divided. You were not designed to live half-conscious, projecting outward what you refuse to see within. You were created for wholeness, for integration, for the conscious embodiment of your entire being. So this is the moment, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, but now. You illuminate the shadow, you recognize the projection, you take the first step toward integration, then another, until you no longer remember what it felt like to be controlled by unconsciousness. And when shadow material emerges again, as it always will, you'll welcome it with awareness. Because now you understand its purpose. You've recognized its message. You've transcended its control through consciousness. Shadow doesn't dictate your wholeness anymore. Your commitment to integration does. Your awareness does. So stand firmly in consciousness. Look your shadow in the face one final time. Thank it for revealing what needed integration, for showing what required awareness, for guiding you toward wholeness, and then transform it, because you're finished letting unconsciousness determine who you become. This is your time now. You are integrated because you chose consciousness. But this journey doesn't end here. In our next video, we'll explore how to build unshakable authenticity, not through theory, but through daily practice. You've begun integrating your shadow. Now it's time to discover your true self. Subscribe to Motivation Dose right now and turn on notifications. We deliver transformational content every single day, and I promise you, this is just the beginning of wisdom that will change your life forever. The path of consciousness you're seeking? It continues with our next video. Join our community today because your journey toward wholeness is just getting started.